afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you attending the symposium. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Our discussion this hour will focus on leadership changes and new opportunities as we move forward from pandemic times. My name is Snyder, and I'm a member of Dr. Naffi's research team, and it's my privilege to moderate the panel today. I'm coming to you from Central Ohio in the USA, where fall is just around the corner. I'm a business owner, and I work on performance improvement, curriculum architecture, change management, and instructional design in both higher education and industry, and I teach and advise emerging talent in instructional design. Our distinguished panelists for today contributed to the white paper that you may have read, and we're so grateful to have them here today to continue the discussion about leadership changes and opportunities going forward. This is a very important discussion. They're from various places around the world and have different roles and responsibilities leading teams through the response to COVID-19. I'll also share with you that this is one of the most delightful groups of people I've had the pleasure to talk with and learn from. I know you're going to enjoy the panel. We've prepared some questions for discussion, and I encourage each panelist to respond from their unique perspective. We'll also do our best to consider questions provided by the audience. So if you do have a question, please go ahead and type it into the Q&A panel. Panelists, thank you so much for being here today. Let's begin with a round of introductions for our attendees. As you introduce yourself, can you help us understand where you're from, your role in the crisis, and maybe something really positive, like your team's major achievement in the crisis? So I'm going to start with Dr. Fischbacher-Smith. You're right next to me in the panel above, so please give us your introduction.
Thank you, Dawn. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for involving me in the panel today. My name is Moira Fischbacher-Smith. I'm joining you from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. My role at the university is Vice Principal for Learning and Teaching. I'm not sure entirely how that translates to the different universities you represent, but it means I have institutional responsibility for learning and teaching across all of the academic areas. I work very closely with our academic deans for learning and teaching and with our colleagues in the Learning and Teaching Centre that we have. My role has been to lead the learning and teaching response in COVID, so that's meant pivoting initially to online, hosting our assessments online, and then leading the changes in practice to start teaching just a couple of weeks ago. Positive experience, I still think it has to be with 4 weeks planning, hosting 40,000 instances of online exams when we had never done anything like that, and certainly not at that scale before. And it went really well and better than our own campus exams. So that's definitely my positive so far, or one of them.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Ohio and The Ohio State University, Dr. Correia.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Ana-Paula Correia, and I work at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, in the United States. I am the director of the Center on Education Training for Employment, and I continue in this role during this crisis. I guess my the major achievement of my team at the center is that they are really stepping up as a team during this crisis. They are stronger by relying on each other. They are more knowledgeable by sharing among themselves. They have many talents, and they develop professionally through shared experiences. Again, glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Dr. Cassidy.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Dawn. My name is Rob Cassidy. I'm the director for the Center for Teaching and Learning at Concordia University in Montreal, in Canada. Excuse me. So I think one of the most rewarding experiences we've had is, like Ana-Paula is saying, is watching the team really come together and assume a leadership role, which I'm sure we'll be discussing a little bit later. That's been really amazing to witness. But I think more rewarding are the trickles of emails we get from day to day from faculty and from students saying from faculty saying how well supported they are, and from students talking about how great it was to watch their professor, who they had no optimism over moving online, actually doing quite well and keeping the class moving and keeping it engaging. So we get those emails from time to time. I make sure I spread them out to those teams, and so that's been the real pleasure and reward from a lot of this chaos that we've been through in the last several months.
That is a wonderful reward, isn't it, to know that people are responding so positively. Let's go back to the United States. Dr. Focarile?
Hi, yes, I'm Teresa Focarile. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Director and currently Interim Administrative Director of our Center for Teaching and Learning at Boise State. And my role over the summer was co-developer and coordinator for our institution's Flexible Teaching for Student Success initiative, which is really the positive thing to share. We work together with various collaborators and other units here on campus to put together a series of workshops for our faculty, and ultimately had over 500 faculty, which is about half of our faculty, participate in ultimately 16,000 hours of professional development to help prepare them for the fall. And the positive feedback from that and the ways in which, as Rob was saying, our faculty felt supported was really meaningful and made that work really worthwhile.
Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Akle, what's your experience like in Lebanon?
Thank you, Dawn. So I'm Barbar Akle. I'm an assistant provost, and I'm also an associate professor of mechanical engineering. So pretty far from education, but I love it. I love education. And from the provost office, we oversee, and actually we renovated the Center for Innovative Learning. And probably the most positive experience we had there is really we made a flat structure among faculty. So we had faculty supporting faculty. So it's a really nice structure that we created on volunteerism based on spreading the the knowledge between faculty by the faculty themselves and supporting each other.
Those are really wonderful testimonies to the ability of you and your teams to step in and provide leadership and services and make a lot of changes during the crisis. I want to acknowledge that at this point, you guys have all contributed to the discussion that was in the white paper that was summarized for the symposium earlier today. And from those contributions, we learned, and I think you didn't actually say this, but you alluded to the fact that leadership has really had to pivot. And the Centers for Teaching and Learning, people who support faculty and other structures to support student learning and equity, have really had to pivot to respond to COVID-19. Now, I know you're not all from Centers for Teaching and Learning, but have that leadership line of sight. So here's my question for you. How would you describe going forward your major leadership challenges or the implications that you see for your strategic direction? And let me start with Dr. Correia at The Ohio State University.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm going to start really short because I want us to all have time for a discussion. But I would like to start by saying that my center at Ohio State is not necessarily a center for teaching and learning, even though we work with educators across the state of Ohio and across the US. We mostly work with statewide organizations, community members, and families. We are soft money funded, and our revenue streams comes primarily from sponsored projects, also known as grants, and entrepreneurial activities that generate revenue in different ways. About 5% of our budget comes from the College of Education and Human Ecology. That's the college we are under. I want to just say that because it's important for you to understand what we're going to discuss later in terms of leadership and how everyone came together to respond to a crisis. I would say that my major leadership challenge when the crisis started in early March at least here in Columbus, in the United States, was to convey a clear and a heartfelt message that the well-being of center employees and the well-being of their families were our priority, and that we, meaning the center leadership, because it's not just me, would fight hard to keep the financial stability of the center. And I can elaborate more on the strategies that we use to accomplish this, to overcome this challenge. And I probably have the chance for during the next questions that Don will ask us. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you just a quick question. What are the implications for your strategic direction right now based on you communicated that message of well-being? How does that take you forward?
It just builds trust. We establish a stronger trust. And even though there's no physical space that we share the mental, the intellectual, and the drive using different ways to communicate. I can elaborate more later. So I think is the direction, like the strategic direction, is to continue to increase the trust on each other, and the opportunities to do different types of work are really coming through.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Akle, what would you say is your major leadership challenge or implications for a strategic direction?
Thank you, Don. So the major challenge for us is really how to, and I think it is for any administrator, is really how to spread the adoption. So we know, and I'm going to share with you quickly how we did it at the Lebanese American University. So a year and a half ago, maybe it was like a year before the COVID hit us, we started this new program. We called it the CIL, which is our Center for Innovative Learning Faculty Fellows Program. And it actually became the core of our center. In this program, we really invited faculty members to submit proposals to the center to say, okay, I have this course, I want to do this innovation in this course, such as using virtual reality, gamifications, maybe sometimes flipping a course, a new pedagogy, whatever they want to do, like an innovation to improve their course. So we adopted these faculty members, and actually it's a sponsored activity for like 1 month during the summer. They were going through workshops from basic things like course design all the way up to new technologies, assessment methods, engaging students, and all these activities. And they were actually implementing them in the course. The semester that followed, they really shared notes. They were talking, and they were across disciplines sharing all these notes. So this is really how we prepared, I think, 6 or 70 faculty members. They were the fellows. And then COVID hit us. They were only 6. Supporting about 600 or 700 faculty members. So it was outrageous, and they did a marvelous job. But I'm pretty sure, also keep in mind that, it was like an overnight, we started the lockdown and realized that the lockdown is here to stay. So we sent an email out to all our faculty members, you know what, we're going online. So these faculty members with 20 years of experience, maybe teaching face-to-face, all of a sudden, with a matter of a couple of days, they had to go all the way online for a task that usually takes several months to really do. So, a lot of faculty members adopted that. They did a good job, but now it's the time to tell them you have to do a great job, because, to really go online on Zoom and WebEx is something, and to really prepare a nice course, use good pedagogy, good design practices. This is the challenge. How can we bring everybody on board? Right now, I can tell you, we have about 20 to 30% of the faculty doing that. They are doing an amazing job. They adopted it. They are fully structured. They are maybe even better than our fellows at this stage. But I can say that 60 or 70% of our fellows, they are doing some remote teaching, and they need to promote that so that we can sustain this.
Yeah, so keeping that focus on quality while scaling those services to everybody who needs them is a huge challenge, yes?
Yes. Yes.
So, Dr. Fischbacher-Smith, what is it like in your world? What is your major challenge or implication for a strategic direction as you go forward from this point?
Well, there are a few challenges, obviously. I mean, the world's changed a lot, but I think I'll pick up actually from where Barbar stopped, because I don't think our strategic direction will change at Glasgow. We've been committed to, and we've been increasing our engagement with active learning approaches for quite a while, and that of course involves creating more online learning experiences and resources, so we then make the most of the on-campus physical interactions, face-to-face interactions that we can. But what I think we'll see is a greater and more extensive commitment to that and engagement with that approach, I hope. So the pandemic for us has really kind of accelerated what we were trying to do anyway, but it was without the opportunity to build the infrastructure in the way that we would have done had we planned that transformation. So, you know, Barbara just went through a whole list of things that have changed, from assessment to teaching to everything, to student support, to student academic support for learning. And I think there's a bit of catching up to do. We've learned a lot, but there's a bit of catching up to do. So much of what people have done for the last 6 months to develop their teaching has really taken us in the direction we want to go in. But I think also people are now quite tired. I think a lot of energy and effort has gone in and they're tired. So I think a challenge for me is to find ways of keeping that conversation going, keeping it alive. Also, when people feel their research has been neglected to some extent, and a lot of what we have changed requires systems and process change. So everything has changed, the whole world has changed. And I'm kind of coming up and saying, well, actually there's more to do. And they're kind of hoping there's a little bit of going back to normal. So I think that's a bit of a challenge for me. But I would say in a positive, there's been a huge growth in staff confidence from what we've been able to do. And seeing how students and staff have responded to so many of the innovations that people have developed in the last few months. So I think energising people, building on what they've done so far, and investing in an infrastructure that helps them to continue that good work and to sustain it, evolve it and evaluate it, and really see the fruits of that investment, I think, of their own time and energies is really where I think my strategic challenge lies.
Well, and you know, as you were talking, I was picturing that that idea of building a plane while you're flying it. Well, then now we have to build that infrastructure underneath it so that we can keep flying, and that is a heavy lift sometimes. So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Cassidy, what is your major leadership challenge or implication for a strategic direction going forward now?
That's good. I think, you know, I think we're all in similar boats, and I think we all share these kinds of, you know, similar challenges. And, you know, what Ana-Paula and Barbar and Moira have said, that resonate deeply. I think just to add maybe a nuance on that, I think one of the things that we've learned, if you know, it comes from the challenge. I think the March, April, May gauntlet there was really challenging, but I think one of the ways, like we're all hearing how people have responded to it, one of the really good things that has come out of that, I think, is allowing sort of the strengths of Centers for Teaching and Learning, the strengths of places like ours to shine, you know, in the sense that we're often change makers, we're often innovators, we're often creative thinkers, we're design thinkers, we're, you know, these kinds of things. And although this isn't the way we would like to demonstrate that in terms of a crisis and these kinds of things, the problems and challenges that arose, it was really nice for our center, and I think it's probably for yours as well, to lean on those strengths and lead the institution. So for instance, you know, like March 12th or 13th, I think was when we got the news, you know, we're shutting down, like, what are we going to do? You know, we live in a different kind of campus. Like we have buildings all over the place in the city. And like in our office was the provost and the vice provost and everybody saying, what are we going to do? And our team was huddled around saying, okay, here's an idea. Here, we could try this. We can do this. We'll design this. We'll roll this out. So it was like a situation room, and we were really, you know, using our strengths to get us through this period. And I think what happened was, we solved some really quick problems, but at the same time, it became evident to the university that when a question like, what do we do about online exams? They came to us. You know, they came directly to us and said, what do we do? And so we were able to assume a role in various aspects of university processes, like Moira was referring to, that we normally have nothing to do with, and put a stake in the ground and say, we can help here. You know, we have things that we can do to contribute here. And so what our center often became was a cradle of innovation. So So what are we going to do about online exams? You know, let's bring it into the CTL. We'll start running scenarios, situations. We'll build protocols. We'll test them. We'll do all these things. We find something that works, and then we release it. And then we can hand it over to another unit and say, okay, now this is, you know, exams office, this is yours. So here, we'll help you. We'll train you. We'll get you up and running so that exams can run on time. Or, you know, to the IT, you know, services. Look, we've gotten this down. We've worked out the situation, you know, all the constraints and settings and whatever. Here, let's show you how you can now support this with faculty. So it's been a very interesting role for our center in terms of how we deal with those challenges more than what they were. And I think that has done a great service, you know, to our unit, but hopefully to the university, showing that, you know, we've built a lot of reputation and credibility through that process, that, you know, we aren't just, you know, people sort of beating a drum about active learning and constructivism, that we actually do solve problems, we actually do get it, and we can deliver on those things. So that's been one of the major, I would say, responses to challenges, and what's become probably the most prominent theme of this period of the pandemic for us.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think this morning in the welcome, Dr. Naffi referred to those of us who do this work as first responders. And we were the first responders because we had the skill set and the capabilities to deal with the challenge in a way that maybe some others didn't have. So what is your experience at Boise State, Dr. Focarile?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I appreciate that you brought up the building a plane while you're flying it metaphor, because we were often talking through April and May that we didn't even know we were building yet, right? Like, we're building something in the air, but we weren't sure yet. Is it a plane? Is it a boat? We don't know. And so that, I think I'm benefiting from hearing of the challenges from the other panelists, because I think there's kind of two common themes that I'm connecting to in our own experience. One is that collaboration with other units. That was previous to COVID, we were a bit siloed in terms of our center's work and the unit that supports online learning and a unit that supports kind of use of technology. And this challenge really forced us to work together and provided opportunities for us to work together in ways that we hadn't before, which was sometimes challenging because we each had our own processes and approaches, but also really gave us all a chance to learn more about the work that all those units do and how we can continue to collaborate going forward. So that's one thing that came out of that. And then I think on the theme of just kind of the workload in general, one of the positive things I mentioned we had about 500 faculty participate this summer. About 100 of those faculty had not participated in CTL workshops before. So we have this opportunity and really want to engage and continue to engage with them at a time where faculty are feeling a huge level of burnout and strain, and our staff is feeling burned out and strain from the huge lift of putting all those things together in the summer. So we can see that we have this opportunity and this way to engage, but how do we do that without further overwhelming all of us? And similarly to what the other panelists said in terms of how do we keep those conversations moving forward when we know that people are already dealing with a lot.
Well, thank you for that, because I think you kind of summarized the strategic directions and the challenges that some of the other panelists had mentioned in such a beautiful way. And so I think we've found a metaphor, and I'm sure the attendees are relating to this and the workload and the fatigue and all the other things that go with it. But let's focus on, now that we've got the plane in the air and we're flying it, what is one promising strategy that you're considering or you've begun to implement that is maybe different from the way you operated before COVID-19, but you think is going to be necessary to sustain the changes that you want to sustain based on the ground that we have gained as we've moved into this new world? I'm going to bounce it right back to you, Teresa. Can you go ahead and share with us?
Sure. I think there's a lot of things that it's giving us, but I'll focus on one as requested, which is one of the things that we started in the spring were these kind of drop-in help sessions. We were trying to get faculty ready to go on Zoom. We kind of started a couple weeks before we actually made the switch. So we, built up the structure of these shared help sessions where there'd be about 10 to 15 minutes of common content and then kind of breakouts to get specific faculty questions answered. And we continued that model through the summer, and we're doing them in the fall. And I think actually is something that we will continue because it still allows us to, and we've been collaborating on them. So the one we have upcoming is a collaboration with our, instructional technologies folks and CTL. So we can do a little bit of, here's how you use the technology, and then here's how you pedagogically use the technology. And so we can do a little bit of that shared thing, but then also just give faculty a place to get their specific questions and challenges answered. So I think that's a model that came out of this that we'll continue to use.
Great breakout. That's a great strategy. Let's bounce back to Canada. Dr. Cassidy, what's going on with that? What are you suggesting that you do going forward at Concordia University?
Yeah, I think, I really like what Teresa's just introduced is, we've built new relationships, and so leaning into those going forward is really important. And I think more, and also in addition to the relationships that we've built with faculty at large, are the relationships that we've built, like Teresa was also mentioning, and like Moira was also mentioning earlier, is the relationships we've built across units and across the prior silos. That's been a real, I think, benefit for the university, is having people with shared stakes actually working together. And we did it, and it's amazing how well we did it and how naturally we did it. And then, and so as we, as sort of the pressure started coming, becoming, I don't know if it went down, but it maybe normalized a little bit. We could really feel it when people started stepping back into their typical silos again, and all of the cracks would start showing up again, and all of the, all these problems started arising again. And so I think it was a good wake-up call to say, like, what got you through this really difficult period is what's going to maintain this going forward. And so I think what we're looking for is more hardwiring those new relationships and institutionalizing these sort of new, emergency processes that we built. And so I think that's in addition to what Teresa's saying, I think that's really what we're looking for going forward. Is we had a lot, we struck lots of like ad hoc working groups that were cross-cutting around the thing. And so now we're considering like, well, let's make that a standing committee. We did such good work together, and we all now understand the bigger system at play. So let's keep those together. And so hopefully in doing that, we'll be able to restructure those processes so that they're more inclusive. And that's, that's where I think, that's where my hope is as well.
Yeah, so building that structure to preserve those relationships is very important. Dr. Fischbacher-Smith, what's going on for you guys?
Well, I think you're going to find there's a bit of a theme here. I think we're all picking up on something fairly similar. Certainly maintaining a lot of those relationships, I think, is really important. I mean, I just think it's the power of peer-to-peer engagement. I think there's confidence that comes from learning from your peers. There's something that allows you to see that what worked for your colleague can work for you because it's worked in that particular institutional context. So something about creating a way for people to share problem solving is important to me. And I think the other thing is that what's in part of what we've all been discussing is the fact that actually we've benefited from making much more visible and accessible what I would call distributed expertise. So, there are people all over the university who have answers to questions I didn't even know I had questions about until the last 6 months. And I think we've made those people much more visible and much more accessible. And my case study in the report is about how we derive the benefits from bringing so many people with different roles together. And I think it's very easy to consider that people in a particular job category have something to offer as a solution and others don't. And I found completely the opposite. Answers lie in the most unexpected places. So like the others, I want to kind of capitalize on that. And I think one thing we are actively exploring with colleagues and people and our people and employee development team is the potential for building more communities of practice. I know it's an approach a lot of universities have taken, and there's a good evidence base that this works well in learning and teaching. We're piloting it for some of our leadership programs, but I see a lot of potential for that to be expanded across the learning and teaching community and to involve professional services staff, technicians, a whole range of individuals, to give them agency and to allow them to create innovative solutions, but actually then empower them to take those solutions forward and have real impact longer term. So that's the way I would quite like to think about how we might formalise some of those creative conversations, if you like.
And it's interesting too how quickly those silos got smashed, and kind of the common theme of everybody working together to bring their best contributions forward for the good of everybody, and of course for our students. Dr. Correia.
Oh, yeah. Am I back to the group? I'm so distracted with everything that you are saying, because there's so many things in common. But I would like to offer some detail and give some examples of things that we're doing. So as I mentioned before, and it was important to create a context for telling the story about the center that I direct, is that we rely on soft money. It means that we need to be agile and really bounce back when we are in a crisis, because we are in survival mode most of the times, which is not all bad because it makes us really resilient. But going back to the initial challenge that was posed with COVID-19 pandemic was the communication, because I believe collaboration only can be possible if we are communicating often and using different channels, and also to keep my presence as a leader. So even though there's no physical presence, because we have to be careful and avoid contagious, we can rely and grow a virtual presence as a leader. So I'm going just to give some detail to what I'm saying. We put in place several strategies to overcome this challenge of being isolated and not being supported. For example, before the pandemic, we will have an all-staff meeting, and I don't know if I mentioned, but we are roughly 60 people center, so it's a large community within our center, not only center employees, but also graduate and undergraduate students and affiliated faculty. So we used to come all together every other 3 months in a physical space before the pandemic. But when the pandemic hit, we knew we needed to stay together and make the community stronger so we could respond. So since March, we are holding weekly all-staff meetings on every single Monday. So it's a 60 minutes, sometimes it'll be over, and none of these gatherings are mandatory. So people join the meeting because they want to, or if they don't want to join it, it's fine. But I just really want to talk about all these details because they're important. We bring about 2/3 of the center employees, students and faculty affiliated to the center every Monday since March. We do not make any recordings of these meetings to allow for sharing without constraints. So every Monday, we come together as a community, we offer announcements, we summarize the flurry of emails sent by administration on the prior week, and we communicate any policy changes to the group. For instance, accessing the campus buildings require a lot of steps now, including take your temperature, register your temperature, get permission from the building coordinator. So all these policies have to be communicated so everyone actually knows what they are doing and don't feel that feelings of being isolated or not being informed. And that adds to anxiety, to feelings of feeling overwhelmed, which is not good when you want people stable and able to perform their roles. So as importantly, we use these all-staff meetings to grow professionally and to educate ourselves on critical topics, at least critical right now, in particular, like racial equity and mindfulness. So we bring guest speakers. We really don't pay the guest speakers. They just come because they are nice people. And they join us as all staff. I need to make this point because there's always a budget thing with guest speakers. And they come and they are generous on sharing their expertise and their experiences. And we learn as a group. And we also use, I'm just going to stop, just one more example. We also use the all staff meetings as a shared place where we can all share aspects of our life as now. So a baby gender reveal, or activities of the center book club. So those are important things for us as community. I guess my last sentence is, this feeds into our continuous improvement plan to grow as a learning organization. And I think if we are strong within, we can project that strength outwards and really collaborate from a meaningful point of view. Sorry if I went over my 2 minutes. It's hard to contain the passion.
But that's a wonderful, endorsement and focus on collaboration and community and becoming a learning organization to sustain the changes. So those are great examples. Dr. Akle.
So thank you everyone for sharing great strategies, and yeah, they are wonderful. I think what I want to talk about is very similar to what Moira really presented, and which is social learning. We're taking social learning, which is something we've been preaching as a Center for Innovative Learning, to really create this peer-to-peer among student learning education experience, to really bring it to us as faculty, supporting each other in a social environment. And actually, this was the idea of the faculty fellows who we really met at the beginning of summer and say, okay, how to move forward? They said, okay, let's do it the way we teach our students. So let's teach each other the way we teach our students. So now they use exactly the same pedagogical guidelines that we teach to faculty to really implement in our workshops and our moving forward. So this was really amazing and very productive. And one of the things that we did in the beginning of this semester, the fall semester, is we organized departmental meetings. So we asked every department at the Lebanese American University to organize a meeting among all their faculty members and invite us. So we would select one of our fellows who is really close, whether from the same school, same department of that department, and they will join the discussion. It was a flat discussion, like how you're doing it, what do you need, what are the challenges, sharing notes, sharing experience. I think this was really amazing. They shared a lot of experiences. We realized that people are doing an amazing job, and we realized that some people are doing a not the very amazing job. So this is where we had to intervene. And people were really, because they are engaged, they are now sharing their own experience, and they were asking themselves the question. This is very important. I think this really enabled us to move forward, and brought to our attention many problems that require our support. And I think we want to do more and more of that. Social learning, I think, is the key right now to really move forward with our faculty and make sure the adoption is much bigger than before, especially because we want this to be sustainable. As COVID will be over in the future, we don't want this whole experience to go away. We want it to stay, and we want the top quality stuff to stay. This is the most important part.
That's wonderful. Social learning, so important. Let me invite the panel. We've each of you have shared kind of a key strategy. I asked you to prioritize and give me maybe your top one. But now that you've heard what the others have to say, does anyone feel moved to comment further?
Okay, since I'm talking, give time for my colleagues to pick up some ideas. Probably, the idea of collaboration that was spun over from everybody. I think this is something very important to institutionalize. Make everything, pretty well structured is also very important. But another experience that I want to share is bringing students to the game. We did that in our this summer faculty fellow program, where we actually invited students close to the faculty who are participating in the program, and we asked them to really review at least the first components of the course that were fully developed, and ask them to give us the workshops and to tell the faculty of what to do. So they were the instructors. They sat with us, they discussed with us on the same table, same level. So this was an amazing experience. So probably, as we move forward, probably we need to bring more of the student. Of course, after we finish our structures properly, we need to bring more and more of the student to the table. Maybe for me in the future, I think this is the way to go.
Great, thank you so much. Ana-Paula.
I just want to add that before the pandemic and all these crises that we're living right now, we talk about collaboration, especially at the higher education level, universities and college. We say faculty has to collaborate, faculty and staff have to collaborate, departments should not be silos, but no one really cared about it or knew how to do it. So I'm just excited, within this crisis we're living right now, that we are finally learning how to work together and developing strategies. And like Barbar is explaining, we are not going to go back to the old days. We want to stay today and we want to evolve from today and learn from these, not just put all of what is happening to us right now in the trash can and not learn and evolve. So I guess we are shaping collaboration in a way that is making a difference right now, and really work on the strategies, because we talk about collaboration, but we don't explain how to achieve it. So now we are exploring ways to achieve it and defining strategies that actually work. So that was my thought. Thank you.
So a quick question, and I'll take a couple people who feel moved to discuss it, is something of interest. We've had some questions about it as the paper was published, but what are the challenges or the opportunities you've had preparing staff to meet some of these challenges and get them ready for the future? A couple people.
I think that ties into what I was going to add and builds off of. I actually wrote some notes down as Ana-Paula was talking about the kinds of things that she's doing with her staff, because one of our challenges, in addition to COVID and various other things happening in the United States right now, we were already going through a reintegration of our staff prior to COVID. And as my interim title might have implied, we're going through a leadership change. So there's a lot of other pieces floating around. And particularly because now our ability to, send folks out to conferences and continue their professional growth outside of Boise State, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about how do we use our staff meeting times and our interaction with staff to really focus this year on individual growth and how do we recognize places where people want and need to grow, and how do we provide them those opportunities while, keeping them safe and keeping them at home. So that has been a challenge of thinking about how do we do all of that on top of all the other things that we've been discussing today.
I'm happy to say something if you like, Dawn, next. I think one of the challenges, I guess, that we had was quite a spectrum of ability and confidence with teaching online and prior experience with that. So one of our challenges has been to create guidance and support that supports people for whom this is an entirely new endeavour and really quite frightening, and they want it to work well and they want their students to feel engaged and involved and not isolated, but they have nothing personal to fall back on, all the way through to those who were already quite confident and who really wanted to go a lot further and were pushing us to kind of give quite a range of support for them to advance their own practice. So whilst it's not difficult to provide guidance for that, and we have, as I've said, people all over the university plus our Learning and Teaching Centre, in the midst of all of that, where there's a challenge is creating a baseline, if you like, or not frightening the people for whom it's new and supporting them, but also not making them feel like they're letting the students down because they can't do the fully developed or more sophisticated work that others have done. And I think within that conversation, saying it's really not all about the technology or doing something clever, it's about making sure you communicate with your students. So I think trying to kind of address that array of interest and need, trying to progress the organisation in doing what we're doing, but also trying to remember at the heart of it, the relationship you have with your students is absolutely core to their experience, being an inclusive and an engaging one. So I think sometimes just getting all those messages across to so many different people at different stages and who hear different messages at different points in time, because of course the pandemic was constantly moving and the circumstances we were adapting to were constantly changing. And it was very hard to plan for the next academic year with much advanced planning. So I think it's a combination of all of that, but at the heart of it, keeping those messages clear for staff and not losing sight of that fundamental learning community at the heart of it all, I would say was quite a challenge for us.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think, the plural, now that you have a wider group of people that you collaborate with and all these messages, Dr. Correia was talking about all the ones that come down from administration, that becomes quite a challenge. We do have a question from the audience about a challenge, and I'll pose it to the panel. How do you panelists recommend avoiding having the transparency of tech-mediated collaboration disappear as people rejoin physical campuses and work off the record in meeting rooms and classrooms? Is there someone who has some advice to offer in this space?
I'll jump in to say that while I don't know the answer to that, I have a couple of thoughts. And one is that I suspect that students and faculty, some faculty will actually will discover that there are aspects of the ways in which they are learning right now that they would like to continue in terms of, their access to courses from the student perspective. And I think faculty, who are in high-risk groups, in regular times, that are appreciating this opportunity to engage in teaching and learning in different ways. So I think some of it might come up naturally. I know in the case of our administration, there's a lot of interest in continuing to find ways to make our courses as accessible as possible to a variety of students. Here in Idaho, we have a lot of rural populations that we're connecting with and hoping to expand those connections. So I think our administration sees opportunities for us to continue to do teaching and learning in ways that we are doing it now in order to connect with those areas. So I think in some cases, both staff, faculty, and students will ask for these things to continue. And that might balance out, other folks who really just want things to go back to the way they were.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. It's there's so many changes we're looking at, either sustaining or trying to keep any improvements or gains that we've made. And so I just want to just kind of summarize a couple of points that I heard. One is that we've gained a lot of ground going from first responders to leading in the education space. And to sustain those changes, we've talked about building the infrastructure that will help us better collaborate, that will help us build communities, that will promote social learning, and really ultimately scale our efforts from, maybe the more individualized efforts we provided to supporting everybody. And as we do that work, the leadership is so important, and I want to thank all of you for the leadership ideas that you've shared, being transparent about your challenges, and certainly the things that you've provided both in the paper and today have enriched so many of us. So thank you very much. And as we close the panel, we're closing here at just about 10 minutes till to allow us to get ready for the next panel. So I just want to remind everybody that the next panel starts at the top of the hour, and it is How to Forge an Equitable Future for Higher Education from Our Present Chaos. So thank you, panelists, and thank you to our sponsors and organizers for helping us have this discussion today. It was absolutely awesome. Really appreciate it.